Kit was devoted to learning and teaching. Today, we will learn and teach Kit, who she was in her many beautiful facets, now that it's we who are honored to represent her in the world. Joyful, committed, ready, clear-eyed, sane, warm, inviting, shouldering what was hers to carry with grace, bonded, devoted, walked lightly, took up just the right amount of space in the world. So let's breathe Kit in and breathe her out. Let's say her name often. Let's wear her colors. Let's love her family. Let's love her friends. Let's love children and women. Let's read good books and have good thoughts about them. Let's get organized. Let's get together. Let's do what needs to be done and bear what needs to be borne with grace, with clarity. Let's be hopeful when there's something to hope for and resolute when there's not. Let's learn Kit. Let's teach Kit. Let's breathe her in and breathe her out and remind each other today and tomorrow and in the days to come that we were so lucky to be in life with her and that that which was uniquely she is now embedded in us, so that someday yet to come, when it's each of us being remembered, those who were gathered that day will notice bright sparks of Kit Collenberg shining in the beauty of us all.
Kind friends all gathered round, something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside, where strangers are as family, loneliness can hide. You must give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. I've walked these mountains in the rain. Learn to love the wind. I've been up over the sunrise to watch the day begin. I always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. Like sunshine on a cloudy day, standing for me now. So give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Love is born in fire.
I'm running out of breath. Keep me in your heart for a while. If I leave you, it doesn't mean I love you any less. Keep me in your heart for a while. When you get up in the morning and you see the crazy sun, keep me in your heart for a while. There's a train leaving nightly called when all is said and done. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sometimes when you're doing simple things around the house, maybe you'll think of me and smile. You know I'm tied to you like the buttons on your blouse. Keep me in your heart for a while. Hold me in your thoughts, take me to your dreams, touch me as I'm falling. When the weather comes, keep the fires lit, and I will be right next to you. Engine drivers headed north to Pleasant Street. Keep me in your heart for a while. These wheels keep turning, but they're running out of steam. Keep me in your heart for a while. Keep me in your heart for a while. Keep me in your heart for a while. Keep me in your heart for a while.
So I think that all of us here are filled, especially after that beautiful collection of photos, filled with so many different feelings. I know that my heart is filled with sorrow, and also with tremendous gratitude. And we know that if Kit was here, she would love to talk to all of you. We thought about how in planning this, she so would have delighted in being here and seeing each of you and hugging each of you and hearing about your life. So we'd like now for you to turn and find a couple of people. And if you don't know each other, introduce yourselves. She would also really want that. Maybe groups of 3 or 4, and share a story about Kit. Take a moment with each other and share a memory, a story, a thought about Kit. So go ahead and turn around and find a group of 3 or 4 and share a story. We're going to hear now from some of those beloved in Kit's life with their stories and memories they want to share with us now. But certainly want to encourage you for the rest of the afternoon to keep telling these stories to each other, and in the months ahead to call up Gary and Michael and Jeremy and each other, all of you beloved of Kit, and say, I was thinking about the story, or how about, could you tell me what you've been thinking lately about Kit? Because telling stories and keeping her presence alive in the years to come will be one way we honor her and honor her family. So Gary, come share some words.
She would have loved to be here and to see all of you, many of whom she really loved deeply. Recently, a long time ago, over the years, on and off. She never was negative about anybody, but sometimes, you know, things happen and you don't see anyone for a while. That's all I mean. So it says on the program words, but I sort of feel like, what can you say when there aren't any words? And as with many things, I learned the answer to that from Kit. As her Alzheimer's progressed, she began to lose words, starting with names until she had no words at all. And what I learned from her is you just do the best you can and you keep on trying, and she did that until the very end. One of the words I wanted Kit to keep longest was my name. We worked at it together. And once, after we practiced a little, I asked her, so what's my name? And she said sweetly, I'll get back to you on that. And then some months later, she asked me if I'd spent much time with Gary. And so I pointed to myself and I said, I can really hardly avoid the guy. And she recognized what was happening. She laughed, I laughed, we laughed together. The last form of communication Kit had was the smile, which never really ended. In all these pictures that you see, I went through, and Jeremy and Michael went through hundreds of pictures. It's very hard to find a picture of Kit not smiling, even when they were not posed or whatever. So she was really an extraordinary person, and the core of that being extraordinary was really a love of life and a love of people. As I said in the little thing that I wrote, I literally never heard her say a negative thing about any human being. And I don't know anybody else of whom I could say that. I can think of people who said things in the last 20 minutes to me. I don't know how Kit got that way. I have a theory. So Kit was born in Chicago to Alec Collenberg and the former Rose Klein. And they had both lost their parents early on. And by the time Kit came along, they were orphans. And I think that made them care even more intensely for Sally first and then Kit. And ultimately for the whole family. I think nothing makes you appreciate your family like having lost your own at an early age. To others in the family, Kit was known as a spirited child. So I never know exactly what to make of that, but I think it means that she had a lot of energy and she would use it however she wanted. And I mean, some people would say probably that she was spoiled, as people used to say more often than they do now, when people thought you could love children too much. I don't think Kit's parents ever thought that was possible, and I know Kit didn't. She was a Chicago girl through and through. She started school at Bret Harte Elementary School in Hyde Park, a neighborhood in Chicago, and almost all the rest of her education was connected to the University of Chicago in some manner or another. It was only about a mile or two from her house. She went to the university's lab school after Bret Harte, all the way through high school. She graduated from the lab school high school, and then she went to Michigan for a year, and then came back to Chicago to finish first a BA and an MA in counseling. And then after graduating, she returned to the lab school to be a preschool teacher. She loved working with young children. She loved the lab school. She loved Chicago. But one winter day, she described to me several times, when the playground equipment had disappeared underneath the snow, and when she had put on and taken off 25 pairs of little galoshes 3 times because they still went outside in recess and waded through the snow, she thought LA looked pretty good. So she moved here. She knew only one person in the whole city when she came here. That was Jackie Goldberg, whom she'd met at Chicago because Jackie had gotten her master's there. And things really worked out for Kit pretty quickly in LA. First, she had already, when she came, a pretty well-paying job as the director of a new child care center at the Center for Early Education, which was then, as now, a school for the children of the rich and the famous. Also through Jackie, and a great stroke of luck for the both of us, she found an apartment on a street in Silver Lake called Vendome Street. On that street, Jackie and some other activists from Berkeley had come back to LA and were intentionally thinking about building and organizing a community and doing a lot of work to that end. And it had become quite a community. There was a lot going on. In the next few years, there would be a food co-op, not a food co-op, a food conspiracy, which is a food co-op with leftist pretensions. There was a Little Red summer camp, of course. There was a daycare center and 2 double garages, which became the Echo Park Silver Lake People's Playgroup Incorporated Child Care Center. Always been known as the Playgroup since it began in the park across the street. And there were was a community law office, women's groups, men's groups, couples groups, study groups. You could tell we didn't work that many hours. And I landed on Vendome Street about a year after Kit, also through connections with former activists from Berkeley. And one of the groups on Vendome Street was very appropriately named and was quite pragmatic. It was called the Eating Group. And what that meant was that people on the block ate dinner 5 nights a week, with the preparation and the cleanup duties democratically distributed among the group. And that's how I met Kit. We cooked together, which meant that she cooked and I watched until I learned to do some things. And we washed dishes together. She was really good at all those things. And she was incredibly nice. I mean, that's what I remember thinking of Kit in the beginnings, like the nicest person I ever met. And we became friends, but she was dating a mathematician named Murray. She later told me that during this time she had had her eye on me since I first appeared. No, I'm not sure why, because I wasn't much of a catch. I had dropped out of grad school, I was unemployed, I was broke. Having most recently worked on a concrete gang in western Kansas, I was drawing unemployment. I was in pretty good shape because of the concrete gang, but I had a comb over and a broken front tooth and no idea what I was going to do with my life. So, but still, she thought she saw something there. Or at least she claimed that later. But after about 6 months of being friends at a really boring birthday party for a neighbor down the street on Vendome Street, Kit turned to me and said, "Would you like to go back to my place for coffee?" And I said, "Sure." And that went pretty well. In fact, to summarize, I never left. I kept my apartment with Mike Kogan for a little bit, but I paid my half of the rent, but I never showed up. I was always at Kit's house. that was when our life together began. It began to evolve from being friends to being lovers to being deeply in love. And so our love grew organically out of friendship, and both the friendship and the love never stopped growing. I can't imagine how anybody could be more deeply in love than we were, and we're continuing to be, and as we used to say in the old days, getting to know each other better. Kit and I often talked to each other about how lucky we felt and how much life seemed to depend on luck. We were lucky to have found each other and also to be born into supportive families, and to have two incredible children of our own, each of whom became fantastic young men and found wonderful partners, and also to have fallen into this community of friends that existed at that time and that place, and that still continues and replicates itself in various places. And Kit continued to talk about our good luck, even after she got breast cancer the first time and went through some really poisonous chemotherapy. And then when the breast cancer came back after 13 years and spread throughout her body, she still talked about being lucky. And even about 3 years ago, when she learned that she had Alzheimer's on top of that, and that her future would be determined by a race between the cancer and the Alzheimer's, a really nasty combination, she always talked about how lucky she felt. I mean, who could feel lucky after all that, against all the objective evidence? But if there was anybody who could find a glint of light in the darkness, it was Kit. So I have to say that I, standing up here, feel great sorrow, but also I feel incredibly lucky. I mean, most of you were, well, all of you were in some manner acquainted with Kit and spent time with Kit. But I lived almost every day of 45 years, 16,242 days with Kit. And so for that reason, I consider myself the luckiest person that I know. Now, I used to tease Kit. Someday I would tell people about the dark side of Kit. She never seemed that worried. And with good reason, because she didn't have a dark side. And I can't say that about anybody else I ever met. And it might be partly because she never seemed to have a need to feed her ego, especially at the expense of others that sometimes people feel. She had a really strong sense of herself. She was a strong, independent woman, and she didn't need the recognition of other people to know how to feel about what she had done. She just did it, and if she felt okay about it, then that was fine. She was often, in a lot of different situations, the person who was out of the limelight, making things happen, solving problems that other people didn't know existed, getting things done, and rarely being given credit for that. And that was just fine with her. That's not why she ever did anything. One example from her early life is that she loved music. She loved especially folk music, gospel, and blues. And in fact, she helped found the University of Chicago Folk Festival that recently celebrated its 56th anniversary. And she was never the one on the stage or talking to the press, but she was the person backstage who made sure that the artists felt welcomed and appreciated and that they were ready to go. So when the famous blues man, Buddy Guy, busted the seam in his pants, it was Kit who sewed him up and sent him out. And she had stories of a lot of the greats, which I wish I had to ask her more about, but they would just come up. The staple singers, Flatt and Scruggs, Ralph Stanley, Willie Dixon, Paul Buttersfield. There's a whole long list of folks like that. In fact, on this theme of luck and music, in the winter of 1960, Kit was walking every day between her house and the university on weekdays, and about halfway between her house and the university was a guitar store called the Fret House. And on cold days, she would stop there to warm up, and she would often see there a scraggly young guy about the same age as her who would be trying out the guitars. And she got to know him as Bobby Zimmerman. And 2 years later, he was Bob Dylan. And it was a big deal. Kit was also deeply committed. She was committed to both individual and social justice, and never out of any sophisticated ideology, because her politics always flowed directly from her personal values. She was active in several movements. She marched with Dr. Martin Luther King in Chicago at a time when the marchers were drawing bricks and bottles from the white racists who surrounded them. And she would talk about how the organizers would put the small women and people in the middle and the bigger people towards the outside, and basically how they dealt with that. But the bottles and bricks sometimes got through. She was never hurt, but she could have been. And then she was also really lucky, she felt, because one day she was, during this time, walking down the street and she saw Dr. King in a car. And so she and her friend just walked up to him and said that they'd been on marches with him, and had a reasonably long conversation, and talked about her admiration for what he was doing and his appreciation for their support. And that work for social justice never ended. In fact, in 2013, she got a Freedom Now Award from the LA Community Action Network, one of my favorite social justice organizations. And the label says, for her respect, dignity, her commitment to respect, dignity, and justice for all. And that cut across all issues. She was really involved in the early days of the women's movement. It shaped who she was, and through her, it shaped who I was. And she forged especially deep relationships with women friends in a number of contexts. A reading group that has lasted at least 35 years. She volunteered when she retired at Planned Parenthood, worked on issues there. She was involved in every activity you could think of, from apartheid, where she marched with our sons, and we went together to see Nelson Mandela at the Coliseum. She marched in a lot more anti-war marches than I ever did, and involving Vietnam, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Iraq, Afghanistan. She made 2 trips to Nicaragua in solidarity with the people there. And all of this work, again, she was a worker. She was a person who showed up and sort of stated by her presence what she thought. But her politics, as I say, were very personal. The day after 9/11, she woke up and she said she had decided what she was going to do that day. And what she did was she went to a Muslim child care center because she knew the director and she knew they were going to catch a lot of stuff. And she wanted to be there to help support. And that was just an instinctive sort of reaction. And her commitment to equality wasn't just a position, it was part of her daily life. She never felt any distance between herself and anyone else. Nobody ever worked for Kit, they worked alongside Kit. And she made a lot of wonderful friends through that sort of work together, including Anna and Maria Elena, who I'm so happy are both here. Kit was especially committed to the right of every child to get a good start in life. She demonstrated and marched for that as well, most memorably when a group of parents, teachers, and about 30 toddlers descended on City Hall. It was something the City Council has never seen before or since. But it was also her life's work, first from teaching at the lab school and then through the years at the Echo Park Silver Lake People's Child Care Center, the playgroup, and then working at UCLA Child Care Services to support community-based child care. She was especially fond of the Child Care Center in Echo Park that she helped start on Vendome Street as the playgroup. She left her well-paying job at the Center for Early Education to be a teacher at the playgroup, where she made, as I recall, $60 a week. But she taught there for years. Both of our boys were in playgroup. Our granddaughter Mila is there now and is blessed to have teacher Irma, who is here, as did her father, Michael, 37 years ago. And earlier this year, she was really happy to visit Playgroup and see how well it was doing. And but we talked afterward about how the expenses had gone up a lot, and it was hard for neighborhood families and lower income families to be able to afford it. And so from that idea and that conversation, our family's establishing in Kit's memory a Kit Collenberg Playgroup Scholarship Fund with an initial gift from us of $10,000. We encourage you to join us in making your own donation to the Playgroup in Kit's name, and there's information in the back of your program on that. It says words in your program, so this may be more than you expected, but I have a few more things to share. So what I've said so far, it might sound like Kit was just a serious and a really giving person, really nice person, but also living with Kit was just a huge amount of fun. There were a lot of things that she liked with a ferocious intensity. She loved chocolate. On a trip to Oregon, she had done some research, and she wanted to be sure that we visited a monastery out in the boonies of the wine country in Oregon that supposedly made a really good chocolate. And so she went up to the monastery door, knocked on the door, and a guy in a brown robe came, opened the door, and she said, "We're the Blazies, and we're here for your fudge." So it was good. And in Kit's memory, when we move outside, there will be a huge amount and variety of chocolate assembled by some of Kit's closest friends, so please stay and sample. On a day like today, there are no calories. Kit also deeply loved ice cream, and she had a special weakness for thrifty chocolate malted crunch, of which you will find outside a few gallons. And some other flavors as well, and a cone, so, and a thrifty cone. So be sure to stop by for your ice cream cone. Kit was fun mostly because she really loved people. And that's one of the reasons she loved to travel, not just to see the sights, which she liked, but especially to meet the people. Just before I met her, she had traveled around the world with her friend Ruth Beaglehole, who will speak in a moment. And they lived on $5 a day, and we know this because there's a journal over there that records how much they spent, recorded by Kit. And she talked a lot about that trip, but there were always talks about, sometimes about places, sometimes about people, and one particular one about both when Mount Everest was shrouded in clouds and there was a monk who said that he could say a prayer and part those clouds. And he did, and there was Everest. So, later years, especially, she and I got to travel a lot together. She liked camping, and she liked staying in nice hotels. She liked Big Sur, and she liked Paris. She liked Joshua Tree, and she liked Sydney, Australia. She liked San Diego, and she liked the South Island of New Zealand. She loved all those places. And of course, she loved Chicago, and she loved Echo Park, and Los Feliz was growing on her after 20 years. She loved where we lived. She absolutely loved Ferndale. When you traveled with Kit, that meant you spent a lot of time talking to seemingly random people and having adventures that you would have never had were it not for Kit, because people responded to Kit's curiosity and openness and kindness with the same sort of spirit, with kindness. There's a phrase, sweet talk, that implies that the sweetness is a little forced and maybe a little dishonest. But the sweetness in Kit was always genuine, and it was never dishonest. The best example I can give you involves travel, but a shorter trip and close to home. When Kit was 45, she told me what she wanted for her 50th birthday. She said that she wanted to ride on the Goodyear blimp, something that she'd wanted to do since she was a little girl. And I said, well, I would like to sit next to Jack Nicholson courtside at a Lakers game. And I had no idea how either of those things could happen. And when she turned 46, she asked me, "So how's the blimp thing going?" And I said, "The same." Again, 47, 48. When she turned 49, I think she decided maybe I wasn't that competent after all, and that she was going to do it herself. So one day, she got on the phone, and starting with the receptionist at the Goodyear Company, she talked her way all the way to the captain of the blimp Columbia, based down in Carson. And she explained to him what she'd told me, which was that it was her lifelong dream to ride on his blimp, and that 50 years seemed like long enough to wait. And on and on. And finally he said, "Let me see if I can squeeze you in." And then she said, "I have a husband and 2 kids." So the Goodyear blimp seats 6 people, but before long, Jeremy and Michael and Kit and I were in the blimp Columbia, sailing out over Palos Verdes with 2 tire distributors from Ohio, who had no idea who we might be and why we were there. And Kit had brought some cookies for the captain, and it was unforgettable, and it was something that I can't imagine anyone else being able to pull off, and everybody having such a good time and such good memories as we all have. I could tell a lot more stories like this, because this blimp episode wasn't actually all that exceptional, except it was the blimp. It was just Kit being Kit. That's all she ever needed or wanted to be. It was enough for her. It was enough for me. So I say, I could tell more stories, but I know you have some stories of your own to tell to each other and to all of us. I just want to close by saying, one reason we had this as opposed to a funeral is because this is what Kit wanted, a remembrance, which is what this is, and a celebration, which it also is and will become after we move outside. But neither one of us had any strong feelings about religion, so I'm agnostic myself. And so I would say that if there's a heaven, or if there are angels in heaven, then I think their angels are pretty happy to see Kit. And they're beginning to get a sense that heaven might be getting even better than it was. And I know they're having a lot more fun than they were. So thank you for coming today to be with us, and Kit would be so very happy to know that each of you are here. Thank you.
Hey everyone. So I'm Jeremy. Well, you guys all know who we are. So it's always hard to follow my dad, but I wanted to share just a few words and memories. As we all know, my mom had this magical ability to connect with just about anyone. She struck up conversations with everyone, and I mean literally everyone. The clerk at the market, people at the movies, in line, the person sitting next to us at the Lakers game. As my brother reminded me last night, she used to tell us, you should talk to strangers. When I was young, there were moments, and I was probably a little embarrassed, as kids can be, about their parents. But just when I would think it was appropriate to cringe, the person she was chatting up would engage right back. And then my mom would end up hitting it off and laughing. And the next time they ran into each other, they would hug and catch up. And she showed me how to be curious, to ask questions. When I was 13 or 14, we made a documentary about a little traveling carnival, the one that set up just down the street on Sunset. And while I filmed with our camcorder, she asked questions, mostly about the games the carnival workers were operating and a little about their lives in that world. And I learned that if you're nice and curious, people tend to be nice and interesting and generous too, that people are good. And she never stopped being that way. Over the past year or so, as her Alzheimer's set in, on Wednesday nights, she and I would often go to a hole-in-the-wall Thai restaurant on Sunset. And even though she had a hard time communicating in sentences, she could still make friends with her smile. And the women there would light up and hug us, hug her, every time we came in. And I'll always cherish those nights. My mom, as my dad said, also loved protest, especially marches. Some of my earliest memories and favorite memories are of holding her hand at marches against apartheid in South Africa, some of which I'm sure Rabbi Susan, who is still Susie to me, and her older brother Davy, and the rest of their family must have helped organize. We went together to marches against the first George Bush war in Iraq and the second, against Taco Bell to support farm workers in Florida, against the Oscars whitewashing of the blacklist when it honored Elia Kazan. I didn't get to go with her, but I know she and her friends went down to show their support for Occupy. And of course, she believed in the causes, but she also loved the energy, the spirit, the feeling of community. I loved it too, and I loved being with her. Her activism was sometimes very personal as well. One of my other favorite memories is one day I was in the car with her driving to school, and we were driving down Echo Park Boulevard, and my brother had painted a mural along with Rafi Perez on the boathouse next to the lake. And there were men out there painting over it with white paint. I'm not sure who had gotten them to do that, but my mom screeched to a halt and got out of the car and threw herself like this against the boathouse. And she did not leave until that painting was ceased, or at least we were able to win a chance for my brother and Rafi to paint that mural over again. The last thing I want to say is something about her friendships. And this isn't just about her, but also about all of you. Her ability, and yours too, to cherish and nurture your friendships over the decades is about the most beautiful thing I know of. I always marvel and tell people, as my dad just mentioned too, about how the reading group is still going strong after like 4 decades. Her friendships, which she cared so much about and took so much care to sustain, sustained her in the easy times and the hard ones. I will forever be grateful, both for being raised in the beautiful community that she and you all created together, and also for the model that you have made for all of us kids to do our best to emulate. Thank you.
Hi. So the day after Kit passed away, my first thought on how to spend that day and to honor my mom was to take my 4-year-old daughter, Mila, to the museum. Kit loved to bring up the fact that she'd take me to the museum and push me around in a stroller all the time when I was a toddler, and especially when we were talking about how I ended up being an artist and an art teacher. And it was really an important part of making me who I am. Mila and I took that Friday morning easy, and we ended up at the Norton Simon Museum. And I thought about how Kit would have done the trip to the museum. She was taking Mila. They would have taken their time also and let Mila guide the exploration of the galleries. They'd talk about what was interesting and funny and weird in the paintings and sculptures. And I imagine that Kit and Mila would laugh and pretend to be ballerinas and stick out their legs like the Degas dancers. We did find the Matisses there. Matisse was my mom's favorite artist, and the house was always filled with his cutouts. Mila pointed out how many boobies there are in a museum, And she found her favorite, which is a Paul Klee, and she calls it the two-headed guy. It's a pretty cool painting. I encourage you guys to find it. I wish Kit was there. She treasured experiences with family and friends, unlike anyone else I've ever met. One thing that sticks with me that she said when the family was together and it was time to leave, she'd always say, "This is so good. Let's do this again soon." And she'd hold your hand and hug you and smile, and really just every time. It was never just like, "Ah, see you later." So she's great. She never let an experience go unrecognized or uncherished. It's hard to grasp how much Kit passed on to me as my mom, as my preschool teacher, as a model for what teaching should be. Kit was gifted in her gentleness and her calmness. She was principled in the way she talked to kids. She talked to kids with the same respect and interest that she gave to her adult relationships, where was pretty amazing at that too. And she made wonderful spaces to explore our interests when we were kids and never rushed those explorations. She gave us space and time to put into words our feelings, our insights, our observations. And she left all of us knowing we were in the presence of a truly present and loving person. To be like Kit is the most noble aspiration for all of us. Outside after the ceremony, we're going to have a table with space for a group collage, and inspired by Matisse's collages. And I encourage you guys to cut a shape out, or cut a bunch of shapes out, and glue them down and make a group collage together. Beth, Mila, and I miss you very much, Kit. And we love you very much. Thank you.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do.
couldn't be a better song than that, to hold Kit. Wow. Okay. Almost 50 years. Ah, good. Almost 50 years of sisterhood, of friendship, of incredible loyalty, of inspiration, unconditional acceptance. Who would I call when the shit was hitting the fan? I would call Kit. Somehow, I may be in dire straits, but it was it's all going to be okay. You know. Oh, I remember meeting Kit. I ended up on Vendome Street. No, I have to tell you, the way I got to know Kit was I arrived from New Zealand off the boat for some fantasy relationship with a guy I'd met in Tahiti. And it was about a 10-minute relationship, and I'm sort of stuck. I'm in Manhattan Beach. I mean, I'm from New Zealand, folks. You don't know. I'm down under kind of girl. I had no way of handling this. Oh my God, I got to get a job. I got the yellow pages, and I started calling up places. Well, I had no idea what I was calling. And I will never forget the sentence, come in for an interview. Our family's like people with accents like yours. So I go to this place, and I got a job because they liked my accent. And I met Kit. That was I'm not going to offend anybody, but that was a place with values so far removed from who Kit and I were. I mean, I remember one day the kids saying, "Oh, here come the servants to take the trash," you know. I said, "Kit, what the hell are we doing in this place?" So it was very fortunate. They threw out a lot of equipment. And so Kit and I gathered it all. I remember I had a little VW, and I don't know what she had a Dodge, I think, a red Dodge. And we brought it back, and we stored it in Jackie's apartment. And you have to know that Jackie lived up flights and flights of stairs. And then we decided, you know, that we were on the wrong side of Sunset. Lots of Cuban kids, remember that? The Cuban children in the neighborhood. And we said, I had always wanted to start a school, so we decided to start a school in this little pocket park. You know, those are Vendome, you all know what I'm talking about. And first struggle was with the dogs. And I remember we had to put a petition out so we could get rid of the dogs. And how many of you are playgroup? Look at all these, oh my God, look at all this playgroup. An unbelievable time, wasn't it? Those garages, you know, Larry, I wish Larry and Rini were here. You know, do you remember the wonderful colors? Remember we had a chandelier in that place? Do you remember we started in the mornings, and then we had and Steph turned up with Jason, and then, you know, and Kit, we were just, and then there were these crazy people from Berkeley. I mean, I'd never heard these crazy ideas. Weren't you working in an orange juice place? He was working in an orange juice place. We were a motley crew. But actually, before that, I have to say, I met Art. Some of you might know Art. And Kit said, you know, you should really think about this. So why don't we go around the world? Why don't we? So we bought one of those air tickets, you know, you had to keep on going. 3 months, 23 off and on planes. And as I was reading this yesterday, I thought, oh my God, we were just above board. I mean, we were hustling people to get us, you know, Kit never ate a vegetable in their life. Some of you remember that? And didn't eat fruit. So we would order one meal, and I would eat that, and she would eat the bread. And then it got so raunchy, we would actually look for where people had left food on the table and would take them. And I don't know. And you know, you looked at Kit back there, she didn't look that raunchy, you know, she didn't, it was an amazing trip. And then I came back, and of course there was that. And the food conspiracy, and then, you know, Eating Group. Eating Group had this wonderful philosophy that you never cooked or bought or cooked or cleaned up with your partner. That was, I don't know how you weren't partners then, how you managed to do that. Anyway, so playgroup. We're fighting for the garages, we shall not be moved. Remember that? We're fighting for the garages, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Oh my God, you mentioned City Hall. These kids had all their little red, who sat there? Who were the kids at that time? Little red t-shirts? Yeah, you know. We unashamed, and we got, you know, got accused of all kinds. I got accused of reading the Red Book, and I was like, I should have done it, you know. Never did do that. And yeah, Playgroup was an incredible place, and Kit was so. Well, the most amazing thing is once we moved and got the building, Kit and Gary bought a house across the road. You know, so that became sort of Grand Central Station. Do you remember that house? And the turtle. And the turtle, yeah. Oh, I'm just reminiscing, but those were amazing. Oh, your boys. I mean, how many of you had kids that went to playgroup? And Pamela's here, and Steph's here, you know, who else? And Irma's here now. I mean, what an enduring history that place has, an enduring history. And you know, then there was remember the Briggs Initiative? Yes. And I had come out at that time and was accused of being a lesbian director of a daycare center. Do you remember that horrible witch hunt? And we lost the funding at that time over what happened. It was horrible. You know, and there was Kit, you know, beside me. I mean, it was horrible. It was a horrible time. Painful time. We've had painful things that people have done. And then I just have to move along. But then, you know, I left there and I started the team program. And then after the team program, I started the Center for Nonviolent Education and Parenting. Kit, whatever crazy, you know how we got incorporated for the Center for Nonviolent Education and Parenting? Is Kit and I sat with that NIAID Press book. And we did it. You know, it was like nothing was too much. We could do it. I remember she could do it. I was just like, okay. Kit had much better form-filling out skills than I did. But there was this unbelievable sense of comradeship. A real compañera, you know, a real sister, a real unqualifying support. But it goes back to what Gary talked about, her unequivocal sense of justice. And Kit would go anywhere for justice. Anywhere for justice. Any child had to be protected, you know, anything for justice. And, you know, and justice with activism. And it was just an absolutely beautiful beautiful thing. I mean, I can't believe that 50 years almost has passed, you know. But I want to finish by telling you about Kit's last week of her life. And I want to do it by honoring Gary. And I want to do it by honoring Jeremy and Mikey. It was an amazing week. I have never seen such a love affair that I saw that week between Gary and Kit. So tender, so intuitively close, not wanting a minute and a second of suffering for this person he loves so deeply. Gary, it was just a lesson in love that I will never forget. Thank you for it. And Jeremy and Mikey, to witness your love of your mum, so tender, so beautifully heart, you know, being at her bedside, listening to her lovely music, looking at photos. I just really, and I felt I was there representing all of Kit's friends who loved her so much and loved her so deeply. And I held you all in that week as I sat there with Gary and Jeremy and Mikey and Gladys. Yeah. And it was what Kit absolutely deserved in her labor to die. And we sang. We tried to sing. We tried to sing. We weren't so hot at it, but we tried to sing. And I'd just like get Brian to help me sing this little bit of the song that we sang. It was a song that we sang a lot at ECHO, at the Center for Nonviolent Education and Parenting, and Kit would always just break out into this gorgeous smile as we sang it. So actually, you're going to sing it right now. Don't let, how can anyone ever tell you you are anything less than beautiful? How can anyone ever tell you you are less than whole? How can anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? And how deeply you're connected to my soul. For Kit.
I want you all to know there's Kleenex up here. Just in case. How's this? Is this, can you hear me? Maybe too well? I've written what I want to say because I'm not very good on extemporaneous like Ruth and everybody else. In my mind's eye, I can see Kit standing up with such determined strength, along with a sweetness and kindness that made it clear whose side she was on and why, and you better take notice. Her dedication to children and her family was obvious and always marked. The combination of the strength and caring seemed to be a hallmark of her very being. I first met Kit in the 1980s when we worked together at UCLA Child Care Services. At that time, we had so many families on the waiting list, we decided to develop an outreach program to help find quality childcare spaces in the community off campus. This meant visiting family childcare homes and other centers who might have openings for our children. So Kit applied for the job and got it, hands down. I felt so lucky to have such a talented woman supply. But Kit did far more than go and find spaces for our children. She established a gathering of providers. The idea was to share and learn about ways to improve the care for the children, as well as to provide support and sustenance to the providers. This was so successful that it was later incorporated to the local resource and referral agency, Connections for Children. We also wrote a book together with Ellen Mellenkopf. It's called The Working Parent's Handbook. It never made the bestsellers list. Kit went on to volunteer for Planned Parenthood, the Alliance for Children's Rights, helped to establish the playgroup, which you heard so much about, and ECHO, and brought her knowledge, intelligence, and caring to other organizations who benefited from her presence. Kit and I would meet for lunch almost every month and share our troubles, successes, and insights. We met at a restaurant called Victor's on Franklin, now closed. I agree. Let's give a boo to that. And the waiters didn't need any directions. They knew what we were going to order before we did. And they were always correct. It was always the same thing because the food didn't really matter. It was our meetings that counted. I will miss our brief encounters. There was so much love and mutual respect. We were sisters, co-conspirators, and dreamers. We talked about our children and grandchildren who were uppermost in our minds. Our admirations and love for our husbands, Gary and Sam, was always on the agenda, as well as Kit's concern about Gary's parents. Over the years, I had learned about her Chicago family and her background. Life was full of love, kindness, and caring for Kit and her family. Her pride in the work and lives of Jeremy and Michael was always present. Damn it, I will miss my sweet and loving friend until it's my time to say goodbye.
Hi, I'm Susan O'Brien, Susie O'Brien, a very old friend of Kit's. This is my daughter, Kate. She's just here for moral support, but she is a playgroup alum. So I think if Kit were here to speak to us today, she would urge us, gently but firmly, to go forward in ways that are described in this poem. The poem is called Instructions, and it's written by a Unitarian minister, Reverend Arnold Compton. When I have moved beyond you in the adventure of life, gather in some pleasant place, and there remember me with words and song. Let a tear fall, if you will, but let a smile come quickly, for I have loved the laughter of life. Do not linger too long with your solemnities. Go eat and drink and talk, and when you can, follow a woodland trail, climb a high mountain, sleep beneath the stars, swim in a cold river, chew the thoughts of some book which challenges your soul. Use your hands one bright day to make a thing of beauty, or to lift someone's heavy load. Though you mention not my name, though no thought of me crosses your mind, I shall be with you. For these have been the realities of life to me. And when you face some crisis with anguish, when you walk alone with courage, when you choose your paths of right, when you give yourself in love, I shall be very close to you, for I have followed the valleys and I have climbed the heights of life. Thank you, Kit, for the example that you set for living life optimistically, intentionally, and always with a steadfast belief in others. Your friendship has meant the world to me.
I want to say a word about this special song. It was a very special song to Kit. It's by Kate Wolf. Many of you know she listened to a lot and shared with all of us. Kit, one of the things that came up as we were sharing in the last days of Kit's life, as I had a chance to also come and sit with her and sit with Jeremy and Michael. I'm getting better at saying Michael. I just want to say that. I've worked on that. So all of you who call me Susie, you can work on it too. Michael, I'm with your brother. That I remember that I had such a vivid memory of that beautiful, colorful mobile. You remember at that house right there on Lakeshore, and you would walk in, and there were those colors floating, and I just think I spent a lot of time as a kid just like laying under that and looking at it and floating under it. And that's part of that memory of Kit, just floating colors and floating love, right? And the way that she would look at you, just love pouring out of her eyes. Love pouring out of her eyes for every step along the way when she would come and witness in any way, whether it was dancing, and then I did this, I know what many of you think like is a crazy journey towards becoming a rabbi. Like, she absolutely came and sat and would sit in these services and just love flowing out towards me. And especially in the last couple years as her memory was shifting, and she would sit there and forget. At one point I remember initially when she would come, she would look at the prayer book and then forget the prayer book. She would just sit there and sing and really just radiate love straight out of her eyes. And this song, this Give Yourself to Love by Kate Wolf, so embodies and is one of the things that we sang to your mom, right? In those last days, just sang it over and over so that and it was one of the things that I whispered to Kit about letting go into that love that she had had for so long, but now she could just fully let go into all that love. And so please sing with us. The words are in your program. Give yourself to love. It's a couple pages in.
All gathered round, there's something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside, where strangers are as family and loneliness can. Give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart yourself to love.
I've walked these mountains in the rain. I've learned to love the wind. I've been up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. And I always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. Like sunshine on
So give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and the laughter. Give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Love is born in fire. It's planted like the seed. Love can give you everything, but it gives you what you need. Love comes when you're ready. It comes when you're afraid. It'll be your greatest teacher, the best friend that you have made. So give yourself to love. Love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and the laughter. Give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Give yourself to love.
So we're going to conclude now with a couple of prayers from the Jewish tradition that we say to send Kit off with love and peaceful blessing. This first prayer is the El Maleh Rachamim, where her name will be called out. I have a English interpretation of this prayer. This particular prayer is not in your books, and then the second prayer will be the Kaddish prayer that we will do. So here's an English interpretation, and then Margaret will chant this prayer in the Hebrew. Everyone cries out mercy. Can you hear me without the microphone?
use the microphone.
Okay. Everyone cries out mercy. I had yeses in the back row and no's in the front row, which is interesting. Everyone cries out mercy, yet the soul is restless, and in our hearts there is a weary flutter of wings and a disquietude we cannot escape. Doves hover and rest, their wings shape shelter for each other against darkness, rain, and unbearable light. So we too gather to give your soul a canopy of memory. We are your safe haven, the place where nothing you hoped and won is lost or forgotten. Rest here with us, sweet presence. How brightly she shines in each moment recalled, laden with the promise of peace and paradise, woven from her deeds among us. Now she is here, she is part of everything we hold sacred. In the midst of these are thoughts of her. Let her be bound up in the bond of living. May she rest in peace. Amen. El Maleh Rachamim Shochen B'Maromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei
השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת קית בת אלק ורוז שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה לכן בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים בצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. And now we'd like to invite everybody who wishes to say Kaddish in Kit's memory and honor to do so. And in particular, we'd like to invite Gary and Michael and Jeremy and Sally and Ted and Benjamin to come up front as we say Kaddish. You'll find the mourners Kaddish.
And Beth and Nancy. Beth, come on up.
Okay. You'll notice, if you're actually an Aramaic reader, you'll notice a typo, a big typo.
It's a scramble of words, so go with the transliteration. The Aramaic got scrambled, so you can unscramble it extra points, but you can just go with the transliteration.
Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ve'alma Divrach Hiruteh, V'yamelich Malchuteh, B'chayechon, U'v'yomechon, U'v'chayeh Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'v'zman Kariv, V'imru, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavorach, Le'olam U'l'olmei Almaya, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitfa'ar, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalal, Shmei Dekudasha, Barichu, Le'ela, Min Kol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiran, Ba'alma, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. O say Shalom B'imromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru.
We're going to ask now, since you're standing, if you can find a way to get close, wrap your arms around each other, take hold of each other in some way, in some sort of many concentric circle fashion, kind of like lots of circles or one big circle, however you want to think of it. And we're going to end with a final song. We were thinking about the song, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? And Gary took to writing some new lyrics to this song. The song is in your program. Brian, do you want to say a word about this?
I will just say a couple of quick things. I know it's going to be hard to read the words and hold each other like this, but it's all good. You can do it. And it's sort of part of the tradition of folk music that you don't have to be a professional songwriter to make up these words. You just have to have the feeling. I think Gary did a beautiful job. And I also want to say that there's also a tradition in folk music of sort of interpreting the words of the songwriter. So when you notice that you're not singing the same words as me, that's because I'm just going to screw them up on purpose in one little spot. But
you're interpreting.
Interpreting.
Reinterpreting. The reinterpretation.
Yeah.
Chocolate, blow bubbles, make a collage, hug each other.
isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. Brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing